Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and welcome to another Precious Metal Ramble. Now today's video is sponsored by Gold Mining Incorporated, who are a junior mining company. Their ticker symbols are gold for the Toronto Stock Exchange and GLDG for the New York Stock Exchange. Now this video is a sponsored video, but I am not here to give you financial or investment advice. I'm here to present some of the information that is out there about this company and also share some insights from their CEO, who is now focusing on actually releasing some of the value in these assets. And for me, that's quite interesting, and I think we can glean some interesting information from that for where and how gold might progress over the coming years as gold starts to rise in price because of all the inflationary concerns and currency issues that are going on in the world. And I have no doubt that it will. It makes it more lucrative for companies to take up these contracts to take gold actually out of the ground. So owning the royalties to something is one thing, but physically producing gold is another altogether. And Gold Mining Incorporated is starting to go down that road, and I think that's quite interesting. So disclaimers are down in the description box. This is not a financial advice video or an investment stocks and shares advice video. I'm just presenting some of the information which is publicly available to everybody, and all the links to these are down in that description box, including the disclaimer for this sponsored spot here on our channel. So I want to start with the presentation here from Alistair Still. We're going to have a little listen and come in and out of it to talk about some of the things that he's saying, which I found quite interesting.
Thanks, Robert. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here today. I look forward to giving you a brief presentation and highlights of Gold Mining Inc. We are a junior explorer and developer with one of the largest portfolios of gold and gold copper properties located entirely within the Americas, and it's one of the largest portfolios in the entire junior space. In the course of my presentation, I will be making a number of forward-looking statements, so I refer you to our disclaimer on our website. You can read that at your leisure. So what makes gold mining stand apart from the rest of the junior space? Well, I think it's a couple of key things. One is that it's a very unique combination of a very sizable resource base with a very strong balance sheet to go with it, coupled with an experienced management and operating team to advance those projects. What really stands out for us amongst our peers is this portfolio we have entirely within the Americas of over 16 million measured and indicated gold equivalent ounces, and a further 16 million ounces gold equivalent in the inferred category. These are located within 5 countries within the Americas in safe operating jurisdictions.
So that in itself, I think, is a really interesting point to start. They have got a lot of this measured resources worth of gold and inferred resources worth of gold as well. You can always take these with a pinch of salt, though. I would very much err on side of caution for this. Of course, it's all about what actually comes out the ground at the other end. And a lot of the time you don't see these numbers coming out of the ground in any course of near-term project length. These are decade-long, potentially even multi-decade-long type projects that would yield these kind of resources. However, to have that much potential on the balance sheet really does help their case in terms of being strong in that future-looking projections. And even if it's not all coming out of the ground, I think it puts them in a good stead, which is quite an interesting point.
And on top of that that portfolio of exploration and development projects, we have a very sizable balance sheet of almost $82 million. A large portion of that is made up of equity we have in Gold Royalty Corp. That was one of the first steps we took just last year, unlocking value from our portfolio. We wrote small royalties on properties in our portfolio, created a new company called Gold Royalty Corp, and today we're the largest shareholder in that company, owning over 20 million shares. We own about 15% of that company.
I have done a video separately on Gold Royalty Corp, and again, it's an interesting way that whilst production doesn't have to start, you can still get value from these things coming out of the ground. It's about the potential, and this is one thing that I think a lot of silver and gold stackers often forget, that it's not necessarily about the physical stuff that's already been brought out of the ground in your hand. A lot of the time, the gold and silver markets are based on what could and will potentially come out of the ground in the future. There's a lot of gold and silver out there, guys. It's not rare. It's rarer than a lot of other metals, but it is not unobtainably rare, I think, is the general message here. So the royalty aspect of bringing something to market as, I think, a really interesting business model and something that I've talked about in the past in a previous video.
Built upon that success, we plan another IPO later this year, where we plan to take one of our more significant assets in Alaska, our Whistler Gold Copper project. We plan to launch that with a new wholly owned subsidiary we created earlier this year. We've called it US Gold Mining Inc., and we plan to launch that to raise funds to advance the Whistler Gold Copper project, which has a close to a 10 million ounce gold equivalent resource inventory. So very excited about that, and stay tuned for that coming up. That balance sheet really poises us for the next stage of growth in the company. We've done a few key steps this year to start that growth, but there's some big catalysts coming up, and I'll walk through a few of those steps for you today.
So I think it is interesting that the likes of this huge project up in Whistler, which they have a lot more information on their website and in their presentations about, would require its own separate entity to bring it actually forward, to actually focus on that project and bring yields out of it. It's a long way off. These projects take, as I said, decades sometimes to even get to the point where they're producing, and then of course even longer until they're actually in the positive. But the fact that it's a company that is not just simply sitting on the assets, on the royalties, they brought in this new CEO to actually drive forward the way to yield some results from all of the assets that they've been acquiring over time. And I think it's quite interesting, again, to have a look at that.
So we talk about this portfolio of assets, and I think if you knew the gold mining story 2 years ago, you'd say it was a company that had accumulated assets, but really had not really advanced their own portfolio of assets. And one of the reasons I came on the company just about 2 years ago now was to change that model, to not only be an accumulator of assets, but to be a company that can actually unlock value from those assets and create value for our shareholders. All of our projects are within the Americas in safe jurisdictions. They're all gold and gold copper based, and we focus on the gold component, but it's important to point out here we do have over 2 billion pounds of copper on our resource statement. And as an added bonus, we also have a project that came from a prior acquisition. We have a significant land holding of uranium targets within the Athabasca Basin. We have over 100,000 hectares of land there on a property called Rhea, which really counts for zero value on our balance sheet, but we know there's an opportunity there to unlock value with uranium assets in this current market. The balance, or the majority of our portfolio, is weighted towards gold. We're more than 80% valued in gold, but we do have a significant component of copper and silver in the portfolio as well.
I do find it interesting that he says he's got a significant portion of copper and silver when silver is only 1% of the entire value of the commodity exposure. But I think it just shows that the different industrial uses or industrial byproducts of mining, it generally is gold and silver are the byproduct of the copper mining, and a lot of the assets that they hold will actually yield, as you can see, humongous tons and weights of copper. That's measured here in million pounds, so 1,633 million pounds of copper, not ounces like it's measured in gold. So you can see there, of course, the complete ratio in terms of actual value of the metal that comes out of the ground. But again, it's just emphasizing that often silver and gold are byproducts of other mining entities like copper.
So to highlight one of our recent divestitures, this just occurred around mid-year. We had a small asset in Idaho called Almaden. It accounts for approximately 3% of our total portfolio of resources. It was not a priority for us, but a local company who was very aggressively exploring in nearby Nevada took a strong liking to the project. They brought in a very good and experienced exploration and management team, and they've optioned that project for us. So this was a project we had acquired 2 years prior for about $1 million. We optioned it off for $16.5 million in payments, so very good rate of return for us. And we also now stand to benefit on the upside by being a major shareholder in Nev Gold, the company now operating that property. So we continue to watch with excitement their drill results as they release them and as they carry on with exploration work on that property.
So that is very interesting to see that they can get that much return on some of their projects. A $16 million return on a $1 million investment in that project, and then ongoing royalties coming as well. I think is quite interesting. It's a way, again, that this organization, I think, sets itself apart from other just simply mining organizations to bring things out the ground. It's not just about the mining, it's about getting the maximum value out. And I think that's very interesting. The rest of the presentation here is just going through some of the other projects that they are working on and some of the other interesting parts about those projects. I'm not really too interested in every single one of the projects to go through. Each of them have their own unique merits, and you can have a look at those at your own leisure. But I do think that it does represent an interesting option for markets for us to consider. It's a risk, like any junior company that you put money into. And from my perspective, I do like risk. I'm at that age category where I can take a longer term approach on things. And if you want to take risks and stocks and shares, then this is most certainly one to look at. That said, this is not a financial advice video. Of course, we can all imagine that things go down as well as up, and it's important to remember that. So from my perspective, I do want to say another big thank you to Gold Mining Incorporated for their sponsorship again of our channel, for the opportunity to make this video. And if you are interested in them, then go and check them out. Do as much research as you can before jumping into anything that you want to invest in, and this is no exception, but it does represent an interesting and different way to invest in gold and silver. So with that, I want to say a big thank you to everybody for watching. A big thank you again to Gold Mining Incorporated. If you want to find out more, all the links are down below. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next video. As always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.